In this next problem, it says 60 people are going to a hockey game. How many cars are needed if they are traveling with 4 people in each car? So I've drawn a picture here. I have 4 people in each car. We don't know how many cars there are because that's what they're asking us to find. It's always good to think about what you're being asked to find. So this is a situation where we have the same amount in each group and we have a certain number of groups, and that gives us a total. Well, they give us the total. So what kind of problem is this? They give us the total and they give us the amount in each group. And then we're looking for the number of groups. So this is going to be division, right? However, we're going to set it up this way. Whenever you're asked to write an equation, you should have some number and then you should have some operation. And at least that amount on one side of your equal sign, or you could have an inequality. And then on the other side you should have at least a number, if not some other operation. So we have a number, an operation, and a variable on one side, and then a number, and then maybe some other things going on the other side. Okay? So with that in mind, let's see how we could set this up. So we have 4 people in each car. So we have, why don't we let C equal the number of cars. Okay, so how many people are in each car? 4. So we know that 4 times the number of cars is going to equal what? 60. So there's our equation. We don't want to set this equation up as C equals 60 divided by 4 because we're just showing the arithmetic there. We're not really setting up an equation. So some kind of operation should be happening with your variable. So we're going to say 4 times C equals 60. Next, we're going to solve by multiplying by the reciprocal on both sides. So we multiply by 1/4, and this ends up being a pretty easy problem. And C equals 15 cars. In this next problem, it says the first book in the Twilight series has 180 less pages than the last book. So we have a first book and we have a last book. Together they have 1,230 pages. So that means we're adding those together. Find the number of pages in each book. So we know we have this basic equation of first book plus last book equals 1,230. We need to define first book and last book. So what you want to ask yourself is which one is based on the other. Well, the first book has 180 less pages than the last book. So the first book is based on the last book. It's defined by the last book. So the last book is the one we're going to make our variable. So we're going to let the last book equal whatever variable we want. I'm using L, and our first book would be the last minus 180. And we're going to substitute those two into F plus L equals 1,230. When we do, we get L minus 180 equals plus L equals 1,230. So go ahead and finish this problem and then check back and see how you did. Make sure you complete a check step. So when you complete your equation, you should end up with 705 pages for the last book. And then we're going to substitute 705 pages in the place of L up at the top. When we do this, L equals 705 and L minus 180 equals 525. So now we're going to substitute those answers into our original equation of F plus L equals 1,230. And when we do, we find that 525 plus 705 does indeed equal 1,230. In this next example, this is like our previous example and our first example. So I'd like you to try this yourself and then check back and see how you did. Keep in mind you want to define your variables. What are your variables? What do you think? shirt, and pants. You want to figure out which one's based on the other. Set up your variables. Make sure you've set up the basic equation, substitute those variables in, and solve. Include your check step. So you have this basic equation, S plus P equals 75, because they both add up to $75. You're going to let your S, or your basic variable, be your shirt, because your pants are based on your shirt. So your pants are $5 more than twice the cost of the shirt. So that's 2S plus 5. Then you just add S plus 2S plus 5 and set that equal to 75, setting those in place of the variables S and P in your original equation. So then when you simplify, you get 3S plus 5 equals 75. Add that negative 5 to both sides, multiply it by the reciprocal 1/3, and when you divide, you do indeed end up with a number you have to round. Since we're dealing with money, we're going to round to the hundredths place, and that's okay. Sometimes in real life you do have to round. We're going to substitute our answer, S equals $23.33 in the place of S, and then substitute the 23.33 in the place of S for pants. Now this is a great example where people like to, instead of doing our substitution step here because it's easier, they'd rather do 75 minus 23.33 to figure out the cost of the pants. But again, if we do this, then we lose the ability to do a check step and make sure that our math is correct. So when I do my check step, I'm going to substitute the two numbers that I ended up with, the 23.33 and the 51.66, and check and see if that equals 75. I end up with 74.99, and that's okay because we are substituting and we ended up rounding the 23.33, so we are not going to have an exact answer of 75 due to the rounding, but we're very, very close, so I feel confident with my answer. So here's the problem in its entirety. This next problem is like the last, so go ahead and try this one. Here are the steps that you can check. This next problem is like the previous one. Go ahead and try it. Here are the steps. Go ahead and check. Give this last problem a try. Remember to set it up as an equation. Since we could only spend 80% of the $650,000, and the reason I say 80% is that I have to save 20% of the amount of money I have. So I can set this up a couple of ways. I can either say I can only use 80% of my money, and then I can see how many Priuses I can buy if they're $25,000 each, or I can set it up as $650,000 minus 20% equals the amount of money I can make, and we're going to see how many Priuses I can buy at $25,000 each. Either way, you end up with $520,000 is the amount you can spend, and the Priuses are $25,000 each, so you're going to end up basically dividing both sides by $25,000, which is the same as multiplying by the reciprocal. And we end up with P equals 20 4/5. Obviously, I can't buy 4/5 of a Prius, so I can afford 20 Priuses. And in my check step, I can check that. $25,000 each for a Prius times 20 Priuses has to be less than or equal to the amount of money I have. Well, I end up with $500,000, and that is less than or equal to $520,000. And notice that since the Priuses were $25,000, there's no way we could have ended up with another one, right? Because we would have spent $525,000 and we didn't have that much. So we know we did this correctly.